Hello and welcome to the Racing Room, brought to you by AK Bets. I'm back after a week's holiday. I'm your host, George Ellick, and delighted to be joined by the guys again as we look back to a week full of news and interesting stories in racing. But we're going to start with a football story, AK, because you know this is my bread and butter. I host the Not Top 20 podcast sponsored by AK Bets. Our nap at the beginning of the season was Leeds to win the championship. You guys paid out early on it. I've backed it. What's happened? Because what I'm seeing now is there are rumours that we're going to set to see you Starkers at Leopardstown in a couple of weeks.
We made the mistake, I suppose, or maybe not a mistake. I don't think it was a mistake. We paid out on Liverpool to win the league. I don't even know the date. It was at least I'd say it was a month ago. I'm not 100% sure of the date now. Liverpool to win the league, Leeds to win the championship, Birmingham to win League One, and Celtic to win the Scottish Premiership. So we paid out on those four divisions quite early. One of the divisions that a few people got onto us and said that you've paid out too early there was the Championship with Leeds, and I am in your camp. I've backed myself personally for quite a few quid, and I just thought they were past the post, to be honest with you, and I still half do, to be honest. And obviously the two teams around them have still got to play each other and stuff like that. But yeah, they're brilliant. They're brilliant to watch. They're the best team in the league, and
Apart from the keeper.
yeah, and the form has just gone slightly skew for a week or two. So it's going to be an interesting finish. I don't even know what price they are now off the top of my head. I presume they're still odds
10
on.
to 11.
Yeah, I was going to say they must be still odds on. They're probably a bit like I think they'll win the league still, but it's not as certain as it looked a month ago.
Is this not a pulp?
What, paying out a pulp?
Yeah, it's a pulp. Paddy Power would call this a pulp, I'm sure.
No, it's I don't worry about it. They're going to win the league anyway, but I hope so for my own pocket and the lads that have been paid out by us already.
They gave it all back at Cheltenham, didn't they? Okay, don't have to pull the wool over our eyes. It's yeah. I've got an each way double, Leeds and Walsall, 2-1 and 25-1, and that was 4 on and 8 on at one stage about 6 weeks ago, and now 10 to 11 and whatever it is, 2-1.
I don't like Walsall, to be honest with you. It's probably why we didn't pay out on.
but there's more to this.
They're not getting caught. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say there's more to this, because when people called you up on paying out on Leeds too early, you made a pledge as to what you would do. And I think it's the job of us on this podcast to hold you to that pledge. Can you just remind everyone what you tweeted, what you'd do if Leeds didn't win the league?
Oh, no one needs to be reminded of this. It's not quite like Gary Lineker a match of the day where I just said, I think I replied to some fella just saying, if Leeds don't win the league, I'll streak around the betting ring at Leopardstown. And it's unlikely.
And they say the days of publicity stunts are over. What a moment that was.
It's unlikely to happen, and not just for the reason of Leeds getting beat at it, but yeah, you never know. It was an off the cuff comment.
I'm excited to see how you managed to brand your body if you had to, with an AK Bets logo, if you had to streak around at Leopardstown. We're going to be chatting a fair bit around the Grand National on this week's show, of course, coming up later on this week on Saturday. AK, I've looked through the odds checker grids, and most horses up there, AK, a standout top price.
Yeah, it's the way we do a lot of events, to be honest with you. I think you either go one way or the other in this industry, I suppose. And some bookmakers go extra places and enhanced each way terms, and bookmakers like us go bigger prices. So our each way terms, full disclosure, our each way terms are probably some of the worst around, and our prices are some of the best around. And that's the way we compete, basically. So we see a lot of win business. And we see a lot of people still bet each way with us just because the price is bigger. So it kind of works for us and the people that come to us as well. So I think we're best priced pretty much everything left in the national at this stage, and I think we'll get even more jiggy on the day and bet very hard. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. But it's one of those. It's probably a race where price doesn't matter as much because there's a lot of recreational business. But we also don't don't really factor that in maybe as much as other people do, and we still give a bit away to the recreational business, really.
Do you see plenty of stories coming out around the national over the last couple of days?
Yeah, today a couple of main ones transpired. The BHA requested that Mr. Invincible, who's been troublesome at the start and refusing to race, they requested he was withdrawn from the race, which the trainer did very reluctantly. In fact, he appealed it. He went before a panel of 3 BHA leaders, and they just said, no, you've got to take it out. So he lost his appeal. He wasn't happy about the format of that appeal. But yeah, that's gone. And the other big story that's broken tonight is that it's quite bizarre, this one. Paul Nicholls revealed that Bryony Frost texted him to say she couldn't ride Stay Away Faye in the National on Saturday because she had to stay in France. And that's all we know at the moment. The fact that Bryony Frost texted him to say she couldn't ride one of his horses is strange, because you think something like that, she would have picked up the phone to him. So I think there's probably more to it than meets the eye. Whether or not we'll find out what that is, I'm not so sure. But it just, something about it obviously just dictates that there must be some more underlying reason to it than she has to stay in France for reasons that nobody really expanded on. So those are the 2 big stories at the Grand National today. 58 left in the race. The other big story from Atri this week is that broke today that Brighter Days Ahead won't be taking on Lossiemouth from Constitution Hill on Thursday. So that's the other kind of like Monday news. We're recording this on Monday evening.
Yeah, so plenty to come out of Aintree over the next week or so. Promises to be a cracking weekend, and as AK says, aggressive with pricing on the national. I'm sure aggressive on pricing for the rest of the week as well. Talking about the Grand National a lot here, but only 78 days until Royal Ascot. That's the nature of the flat season, creeps up on us quick. And AK, you're going to be there, albeit not at Aintree this week.
Yeah, no, we threw in a few last-minute bids on pitches today at Aintree, unsuccessfully, pretty much. I think unless someone gets back to me by pretty much close of play, we're not going to be there. We'll be there. We'll be there on the Thursday. We're flying over just to do a recce, as they say, and have a look about. It's probably the quiet day Thursday, in fairness, but it'll be decent. Could be a couple of decent races, but yeah, we're just going to observe the lie of the land basically, and do a bit of work on where we might buy for the following year. But then, yeah, we bought into Ascot, so we bought pitch 9 on the rails at Ascot. So yeah, we'll be in Ascot, and I'm told by people more knowledgeable than myself that we need to wear top hat and tails as well, which is going to be an absolute calamity. It's going to look.
What's your head size? Harry's got one you can borrow, I think.
Oh Jesus! I don't think they make one big enough for my head at the moment. But it's going to be. You might have to sew 2 of them together or something. But it's going to
you might need that top hat at Leopardstown in a fortnight.
What's that? That's a good idea. Yeah, give it an airing. I'm talking about the hat.
Student day at Leopardstown, I think. I'm going to get in trouble. I'll stop speaking.
We normally save questions for the end, but as we're talking about your Royal Ascot pitch, we've got basically a poem from Ben Keith, as far as I can make out, somewhere between a poem and a riddle. The game is vast and offers many disciplines to master, and in each discipline, entirely different areas. Any bookmaker who has succeeded has because of good service, practice, and most importantly, identity and absolute consistency in it. If broken, history teaches us that the firm dies quickly on the vine. At Royal Ascot, your brand and identity will be new, unique, and completely different. You are also betting on the top rail where your difference will stand out even further. How do you plan on embracing, showing out, and connecting the strength of your difference with such a demographic? You can only be the best version of you, and not doing so will be fake and ineffectual. I look forward to seeing you at work and courting this clientele, converse and connect, be you, but how best? It's basically advice, question. You know, I don't know how you're going to respond to it, but it's, Ben giving you some advice about your first year at Ascot and wondering how you're going to approach it.
Ben is always a useful sounding board for advice, and I take most of it on board, I must admit. It's yeah, Ben's someone we'd always listen to be honest with you, because he's built himself up from nothing, and they're the type of people I like just in general. How are we going to differentiate ourselves? I think we'll stand out because we'll look so uncomfortable and ill at ease in top hat and tail. So I
In
think
your AK Bets branded top hat.
I
Yeah.
think the sweat will be pouring off us no matter what the weather, just because of the dress code. But yeah, I think we'll stand out just because I don't think anything we do is fake or contrived. It's all warts and all, I suppose, this podcast included. And I think that can, in an industry where it's a little bit sanitized at the moment, I suppose it's people find that refreshing. I suppose that's part of our USP. I suppose, like, we try and bring people in by speaking normal and being as like the people that are having bets with us. To be honest with you, we used to be on the other side of the counter, and now we're on this side of the counter, and it's kind of, yeah, I think we'll do pretty much everything as we do. I'd love to be in a pair of shorts and a hoodie, but it won't happen. But we'll converse with people no matter if they're taking 1 million barrels of oil out of the ground a day or whether they've just clocked off from a night shift at Tesco. We'll speak to everyone the same. You get dealt with the same, and that's basically it. I don't think we'll do anything different really. Probably lay bigger bets, hopefully.
Tell you what, you might be on something there. The tailcoat top hat hoodie could be one to bring out. Just attach to the back, put it over, job done.
Gonna have to get some tailoring advice off Harry at his contacts maybe.
Right, we'll have a look at the weekend that was. Of course, we had the Lincoln and plenty of other decent racing. The flat officially being back at Doncaster over the weekend, and TC Dancing Gemini was one that was massively impressive after winless in 2024. Set off 8-1 for last year's Derby, a horse of obvious promise who did it on the track for the first time in a while.
Yeah, ran a screamer first time up last season, and did so again here. They're thinking they might go to the Group 1 Lockinge, or they might take more tentative steps and go to Sandown. But yeah, wildly impressive performance. That, albeit is an listed company against lesser horses that he will meet in the future. But you can't knock that performance. Yeah, Godwin's son. That won the Lincoln, came from nowhere. Didn't trade at a massive price in running, but the story of that race was, unfortunately, Tony Ennis called the second. It's called the second as the winner, and he had to go and re-record it for the replays. I wouldn't hammer him too much for that. A lot of people just said, look, own the mistake and leave it out there. But obviously, people going and watching the replays on Racing Post and whatever site,
yeah,
they need to know. They need to have the correct one. So
yeah,
some of the best commentators have made mistakes, including the best. I think Richard Hawes has made one, not as striking as this, but yeah, I wouldn't bash him up for that. I mean,
are you surprised that he re-recorded the whole closing stages of the race rather than just the, as they passed the post?
I suppose it would be kind of like, I don't know, I've never commentated it. I think it's a ridiculously hard job. I imagine it's just for him to get on a roll rather than do that. But yeah, a lot of people were being a bit unkind there. But
it's amazing. It's amazing it don't happen more. I always think, like, some of the big field races, like as job pressure must come with and scrutiny. It must be pretty tough, that job. He's one of the better ones at it as well. I think he's really good, and yeah, I think
a lot of people saying he should have adopted the Tomo stance from now on, even if it's a half a length. It's a photo. Come on, mate.
Do you remember I can't remember who did it. I think it might have been ITV. About 10 years or so, got a bunch of trainers to call races live, and they couldn't. I mean, they're all terrible because it's impossible, like to be able to accurately say, who's where, and especially
even longer ago. I remember they got Hale and Pace to do it. That must have been about 25 years ago, and they weren't very good either.
Yeah, I think well, it was one of them. I think one of them actually did. I think it was a half-hour program. I think
Yes, it's coming back to me now.
These series about people in the media doing serious jobs, and I think that was, or was it no, or was he? Was he? No, actually, he was. I think Halo Pace. He actually did an hour program about becoming a bookmaker, and he actually stood for one race. I think it might have been at Royal Ascot, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, mate, like, it's an incredibly difficult job, commentators, and we won't bash him up about that. A lot of people were moaning about the performance of A Dream to Share at the Curragh. Dual Grade One winner, Bumper Horse. Big drifter at the Curragh on Saturday. Drifted out from, I think, 13 to 2 to 11 to 1 and ran an eye catcher over 7 furlongs. I think the clue there is the 7 furlongs. Obviously, it's going to stay a lot further. A lot of people were just moaning about that, but I think it was quite obvious. It was. I think they're just trying to get him handicapped on the flat. He was never going to be seen to best effect over that trip, and it was just shades of Sir Mark Prescott, running horses over a less than optimum trip, maybe with a view to a handicap in mind. A lot of people are speculating about what handicap he's going to go for, whether it be Royal Ascot or Galway or whatever. But it got a few backs up that performance, but I think the clues were there beforehand.
Probably going to have to run a bit better to get into a Royal Ascot handicap, given the mark likely get off the back of the 2 runs we've seen so far.
Yeah, like I said, he's run over two flat starts over a 7 furlongs in a mile. So I imagine another one over that trip and then back up to a mile 6, Prescott Stoley.
Interesting to see what price everyone opens up on that first
like
handicap.
The best way to lay a punt is often on the third handicap qualifying start.
Yeah,
100%. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
When people are expecting it to to be having another quietish one, and then you just like smash it and then don't bother about it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do with it. It's it's part and parcel of the game, isn't it? But like I said, I think most people would have seen that coming over that trip.
And a good day for the O'Brien team at on Sunday.
Yeah, Delacroix won there. That's about 10s for the Derby now. Henry and Matisse did quite well to win under a penalty. That probably in the Guineas pictures. They had a handicap winner as well. So yeah, they had a good start to the turf season there.
I was at Leopardstown briefly. I took the 2 kids up there to Leopardstown on Sunday. And I was just stood by our pitch, and some fella came up. I can't remember the race. It might have been the first one there. And fella came up to the pitch, and I heard him saying, "I couldn't back that. Well, I couldn't back one of Aidan's, though he hasn't had a winner this season." And talked to one of the lads on the pitch, and so yeah, that's the quality of chat there.
Did you hand him an AK Bets free bet?
Probably.
Yeah, and just a couple of other things to mention. I don't know if you saw the video of the loose horse at Stratford. Basically got loose and got in the ring and was running around the ring, and luckily 2 people caught him pretty sharply. But that's another thing. Talking about commentators and mistakes. These loose horses. I mean, if you've ever been up close with a horse when it's running around like that, they're absolutely frightening. It's amazing we haven't had problems like that and incidents like that. There was a thread on X and people just saying apparently there was a horse about 20 years ago ran into a pram and just knocked it over, but unfortunately it was empty. Unfortunately, there was nothing. There was no, there wasn't a baby in it.
A lot of booze in it.
It's absolutely frightening what could happen.
Yeah. I thought they did incredibly well to get it back down the chute, because
yes.
Like it looked like he wasn't intending to at all, and someone, I don't know if it was who it was who did that, managed to kind of divert him back down. He's going at full gallop.
Trigger Happy TV used to do a great skit there where it was at the top of some steps in London, like one of the churches or something, or cathedrals or whatever, and they used to have a pram with him, and then used to just let the pram fall and then pretend to grab the pram and just miss it and just record the pandemonium as the pram. It's absolute class. I used to love Trigger Happy. So good.
And the only other thing today, actually, it was quite a bit of comedy about it. It transpired Dubai were working with the English authorities, RMG and ITV, to actually dovetail the Grand National and the Dubai World Cup onto their ITV coverage. But it transpires someone forgot that the clocks went forward an hour on Sunday, so it didn't really work out time-wise. But someone contacted me this afternoon and said, actually, ITV were never really interested in showing it. They had too many entry commitments. So, but whether that's just someone covering their arse, I'm not so sure. But it was mildly amusing. But it's yeah, I say, if you believe what I was told and the person who told me would be in a position to, he said it was never really a runner for Dubai World Cup to be on the ITV coverage on Saturday.
Very good.
Right. Right, plenty of topics to get through through the rest of the show. We'll kick off with the appointment of Jian Mullen, appointed as CEO for the Jockey Club, former CEO of Ladbrokes Coral and of Reach since 2019. AK, any thoughts on this appointment?
Thoughts on the appointment? Reach is just on my radar from just some other podcasts that I listen to of I don't know, staff morale and the share price and a few other bits and pieces. So it's Reach is, if anyone doesn't know who Reach PLC are, they're the guys that basically clog up your timeline when you try and read some kind of regional newspaper or something along those lines. They've featured quite heavily on like the Restless Entertainment podcast and some of Jim Mullen stuff has appeared on that as well. I just thought it was half funny. Reading the Racing Post article and the quotes where he said, I think he's quoted as saying something about the quality of horse racing is linked to the quality of, it's similar because of like the quality of journalism. And I presume he was referring to Reach PLC though, which is,
oh my God.
I think some of the staff have been complaining about having to write 50 articles a day and stuff like
They
that.
laid off basically all their local football reporters about a year ago.
They did, yeah. Yeah, I think I've heard that actually. But yeah, it's literally just a content farm, isn't it? And it's just getting as much crap out there as possible. Basically, that's kind of the model. So that made me laugh. I thought it was also just funny that I don't know, is horse racing obviously isn't any kind of enticing industry to go out and get like big people from outside. It's kind of like when Football Manager jobs come up and they basically, Alan Kirbishley's 5-2 favourite, like he used to be for every managerial job across about 3 divisions. It's kind of that, isn't it? It's kind of like a bit of a merry-go-round of the same people and the same. It's just, I don't know. Well, good luck to him, but it's just more. It feels just very more of the same and managed declining to me.
It's interesting because they had someone from America lined up who accepted the job, and they actually cancelled on the Jockey Club racecourses a few months ago. So it was a race against time to get someone in by May the 1st. Obviously, he's got his background at Ladbrokes and Coral. He was a CEO there for 3 years, I think. I spoke to somebody who worked under him there and said they didn't know him very well, but they were very, very surprised he got such a lofty job as this. But you listen to the Nick Luck Daily podcast today, and
is it even that lofty? Is it that lofty a job?
Well, he's going there at a very, very challenging time, isn't he?
Oh, 100%. I agree with that. But like, it can't be that lofty if nobody wants it.
Yeah, well, like I said, he's got some task on there with it's been a common theme of this podcast, about their finances. So yeah, it's a bit of a poison chalice, but he's taking it on, and that's how he gets on. It's not an easy gig, but he's accepted it.
Talking of,
what do you think, Harry?
To be honest, I don't have much to add to that one. He's been getting, everyone's been getting grief because he's from a bookmaking background, and I think I very broadly fall into the category of thinking that it's not always a great idea to get anyone in from big call to run racing, because I think that your background does lead to it. A different approach to the sport than people within the sport, or indeed people who've no connection to the sport at all. I think there's an argument they're more inclined to see it as a product than a sport, an extension of betting, whereas racing, I think, would consider itself central to betting, and that it's sort of a betting first attitude rather than a racing first and attitude. But look, yeah, that's just a massive generalization, and we'll just have to see how he gets on.
Yeah, there's been a clip of Seb Butterworth on Nick Luck's show on Racing TV, who obviously represents Flutter. I think director of racing is his job title, or something to that degree. Now, there's plenty in there. Okay, we'll start with the thing I think that really kind of caught punters' attention, and that was the claim that only 1.5% of accounts had restrictions placed on them. And then kind of when Nick tried to press him a bit further, he then said active accounts, which seemed to kind of really, I don't know how you would differentiate what's an active account and what's an inactive account. And also the idea that what restrictions could be in terms of, is it taking away promotions? Is it, all accounts are restricted on opening, aren't they, to a degree? So what did he make of that figure from your experience? Were you surprised to see it, and what do you think it actually means?
I think you'd have to know just the underlying data behind it. I suppose, like, you need to know what's being discounted there. When you're saying active, how long they've been active for, how long they've been inactive. I think with firms like the Flutter brands, they don't have any over-ask tools, so they have events. What you can go into what's restricted, what's not restricted. If you're betting on the lowest grade, a customer might not be restricted, but he's betting on something so very low down that an individual bet is restricted. There's loads of different caveats to it. I think the number doesn't have much meaning. I know people don't like to hear it, but like, it is quite a small percentage of customers that are restricted or have permanent restrictions on their account. I think it's probably the people that follow the sport more seriously, the number will be inflated rather than the general population. If I speak to any of my mates not involved in the game, they've never heard of anybody that's restricted. So I think, not unless I get a hold of their account.
I was about to say, apart from them.
But yeah, so like, it's kind of it depends. The number is kind of, I understand why he's got the pushback from it, but you'd need to know what they're counting, and they're not going to go into it in any kind of granular level, I don't think, as well. But it is a small set of, it is as a percentage of that overall database, which will be in the set comfortably. For one brand, it'll be easily comfortably in the seven figures. You'd need to know whether they were dormant. We call them dormant accounts after a certain period, but they'd still be active, but they're technically dormant. So there's loads of different caveats to it. Yeah, it's hard to know. It's hard to know what to make of it. It's obviously always going to get people's back up, and it's probably why the question's been asked. But not many people as a percentage do encounter restrictions. It's the people who have restrictions, the people they knock about with have a high proportion of restrictions. And it's the same for me when I used to bet. Basically, it's the same. It's just understanding. I don't think they should do when they look at the turnover numbers of these firms, but the overall pie, a lot of people aren't restricted, unfortunately, and that might not be palatable to hear for the people that are.
Yeah, there was a few other standouts from what he said. What I found very surprising, which led me to believe he might have been including the exchange customers in his Flutter figures, that he said 20% of their customers last year won, which I thought was strikingly high. Now
that won't be correct.
That's why I said that maybe he's including the exchange numbers in that 20%. I mean, that to me, as soon as he said it, I just thought
it's again, right. What you'd have to caveat there is there might be a lot of these firms get a lot of promo abuse and stuff like that just from sign-up offers. So the lads that sign up and just arb one selection and then arb a free bet, they might have staked 30 quid and they're winning 15 quid. So technically that statement might be correct. When I deal with some of the people that try and say like affiliates and things like that, they're always obsessed with first-time deposits and as a metric. And I can't stand first-time deposits as a metric because it's so skewed. And it's for those reasons around promo abuse and things like that, which are absolutely rampant, by the way. Yeah, it's kind of like it'd be interesting to know what that number was for the whole of that 7-figure database that had 5 bets or more, because I'd say it's a lot less than 20%. So you can what is it to say? You can prove anything with numbers basically. Like it depends how you cut it up, and that might again be a factually correct statement, but in reality, it's probably not correct.
It's the lies, damn lies, and statistics, isn't
That's
it?
the one, yeah.
And skew it any way you want. I mean, Nick could have gone after him a lot more than they did, but
Yeah, and I obviously I used to work there, and I don't know him. I've been gone years. I've been gone out. People still ask me what's he like and what's this guy like, or someone's applied for a job, what are these like? And I've been like, I'm always like, I've been gone 7 years now. I barely know anybody left in the place. But racing directors should away. I think just the way it's gone in the industry is that some of the people in those roles, I'm not referring to this guy specifically because I have no idea who he is. I wouldn't know him if he walked past me in the street, but they're not really for the pure granular level. They've probably got fellas reporting into them and feeding them this stuff, and they're not pulling numbers themselves. And yeah, it's hard to know. He's probably saying someone's probably given him that number, and he's probably reciting that number. Probably similar to politics and stuff like that. That it's someone in the back office beavering away and finding out the answer.
I thought potentially that the cheeky part, or a cheeky part, was the suggestion that to the extent that they do restrict their customers, it was the fault of Money Supermarket and the people who do match betting. I mean, that was literally the only example he gave of why someone might have their account restricted, and that's unlikely to be the case.
It's probably that abuse angle is probably a large part of, how would you word it? I don't know the numbers, obviously. I'd say some of them sign-up offers are absolutely rife for abuse. Like if we do something that's anywhere massive, and they've got so, just in general across the industry, they've got so restrictive probably to what they were once, where they were probably a lot more generous than they are now. If you do a sign-up offer that's got a net expected loss for you, I know from some of the stuff we've done, if we've got something that's a net expected loss of 6 or 7 quid, we'll get what I suspect is people third-party accounting or multi-accounting. We'll get flurries of people with the same characteristics opening accounts to take.
But those people probably aren't watching Luck on Sunday. The point is he was doing that to a racing audience, and I think that was probably a mistake to go on there and not address why most of the people who were restricted watching that show had been restricted, and to suggest that it was. I'm not sure it was a brilliant bit of PR myself. That I don't really understand why they felt the need to do it, but. There we go.
Yeah, it's interesting that he actually kind of like went on. I'd be interested to find out who instigated that. I mean, I watched the whole of the interview, and I just thought Nick's giving him an easy time here. I mean, they didn't read, and Cornelius isn't betting focused at all. Cornelius Lysart, who was the journalistic guest on there, and I was surprised that he went on there because Seb Butterworth had been on Nick Up Daily a few months back. And he left a lot to be desired there. So I was surprised he went on. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see actually, how that was arrived at, whether it be, bigging up the Jockey's Cup that finishes on Friday. I'm not sure, but yeah.
One of the things I think he said, I'm sorry, I've not seen this live. I've only picked up bits of clips people have sent me. I think one of the things he said was cross-selling. The promo cross-selling stuff like that was a positive for racing, did he say?
Yes, he did a net positive, but he didn't really explain what that meant. But yeah, he did say that. I was going to
say you'd love to know what the thinking is there, because I'd say it's not a net positive for racing, I'd imagine. I think people who come in on racing's the most, as I've said on this podcast a few times, racing, I love racing. I used to be mad into it. I'm still into it, but not as mad into it. I love it. As a bookmaker, it's by far the most expensive product on our site. It's extortionately expensive. And as a business, and people again listening to this, you might not like it. If you've got people playing your most expensive products, one of the things I don't like is people saying, "Oh, listen," and it's a fair comment. People say you shouldn't be cross-selling horse racing or whatever into casino, right? I understand if you've that opinion, that's fine. I generalize it a bit more, and I'd say it makes total sense for a business to cross-sell people from a product he gets barely anything out of to products he gets more out of, whether that is casino or other sports. Like I want my and I've said this before, I want my horse racing turnover to grow, but I want my other products turnover and other sports turnover to grow higher than horse racing is growing, if you know what I mean. It's the most expensive product. So you want, and it makes sense if people are coming in on it, why wouldn't you try and transfer them to a product that you make more money from? It's just basic common.
I think that's an entirely fair point, because you're a business. The only warning I would sound about that is it is one of the major arguments that the antis rely on. People like Matt Zarb-Cousin, and they get traction with it. They get traction with the idea that people are coming in for this, nice, wholesome sport, horse racing, and they're getting turned on to blackjack with, a man with a forked tongue ripping them off within 3 seconds flat. So you're not the first bookmaker to have said that. It's very I think was it Richard Knight said it quite recently as well, that why wouldn't you be doing it? I admire your honesty, but it fuels the arguments that are being used against.
That might be true, but like if that changes and that policy is changing, there'll be another argument for why.
Oh yeah, there's always an argument. There's always an argument. There's always a podcast.
Yeah, 100%. So it's I like, to be honest with you, I don't 100% agree with it, but I can see the reasons for it, and obviously we'll comply with it. I think there's more nuance to it, and it probably helps us. I think actual rules, and you can do this and you can't do this, are more beneficial.
Yeah.
Even if you disagree with parts of it, more beneficial to have steadfast rules, and these are the rules rather than guidance, I suppose.
I think that's right. We're going to come on to this, but I think that's right, because business is always going to push at the limits of its regulatory barriers. That's what business does. If those barriers aren't clear, then they're going to break through them too often, and I think that's what we're seeing an awful lot.
Yeah, I think Richard Knight agreed with. James Knight agreed.
James Knight, sorry, yeah.
I thought you meant James Knight, and I was racking my brain.
Yeah, Richard Knight is the Bloodstock agent, isn't he?
I was thinking, does he think Richard Flint or James Knight?
Sorry, James Knight. James Knight, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, there are a couple of stories to cover here. Gambling Commission announcing, as we just touched on there, the mixed product promotion ban. Basically stopping, for those who haven't seen this, stopping operators from being able to promote an offer around horse racing with free bets or free spins on a casino coming off the back of it. Also, Gambling Commission announced the latest fine. The football pools, who've rebranded to just the pools, who've had a torrid time of it in recent years, been slapped with a £375,000 fine. Harry, we've kind of touched on the mixed promo, but what did you make of the fine to the pools?
I thought that, it's interesting because it starts, well, interesting is relative, but it starts with the guidance on the fine. Operators are expected to consider the issues outlined below and review their own practices to identify and implement improvements in respect of management of customers' accounts. Now, this is something I mentioned last week when we were dealing with the corporate bet fine, which is that the Gambling Commission expects operators to look at these and learn from them, and so that not make the same mistakes. I think, again, it falls into the trap of just not giving anything like enough guidance as to as to what has gone on here. There's an awful lot of stuff about things not being done, checks not being done in a timely manner, not done promptly. There's one example, I think, of a certain check not being enacted for 25 days after the triggering event. So that's something close to a sort of, material bit of guidance, but really all that's telling us is 25 days is too long for this particular instance. We don't know what the trigger is. They don't ever really tell you what the triggers is. They say they're too high. Again, we have AML policy is over reliant on financial triggers to identify when customers present higher money laundering or terrorist financing risks. It's just so general, I think to expect operators to learn from this stuff is pretty ambitious. I don't want to go off on another one like last week, but this is closer to the Bet365 reason, where we're dealing with much more generic issues that again, I mean, to a large extent, these penalties are just that these findings, these summaries of findings, are just a repetition of the rules in the LCCP, and I'm just not sure they help anyone, and yet they're used to whack operators over the head. Why didn't you? This is exactly, why didn't you learn from the Corbett fine? Why didn't you learn from the Bet365 fine? I'm not sure there's very much learning to be had.
And just harking back to that mixed product promotion ban as well, I'm just thinking here off the top of my head and thoughts entering my head as we continue speaking. Do you think, because this is my initial thought without having considered it past 1 minute, that if you can't cross sell from horse racing into other products, do you think the level of incentives to bet on horse racing will decrease overall from a bookmaker point of view? I.e., will bookmakers just offer less on horse racing, less extra places, less big prices, less bonuses for having a bet on horse racing? Do you think that'll actually? I think a lot of people think if you don't cross sell horse racing into other sports, it'll increase the turnover on horse racing. But I'm just thinking out loud here that do you think that might actually be the opposite? I'm interested in what you guys think from the outside.
I certainly think that there is a very significant danger of that, particularly if you listen to bookmakers who do, it has to be said, have an angle here, which is that they, for the reason you give, is that it's an expensive product. But I think what you would probably say, I may be putting words in your mouth, is that it becomes less attractive for bookmakers to promote horse racing, particularly to new customers, if you're not then able to try and move them around the products once you get them
obvious. In. That feels fairly obvious, doesn't it?
I think that feels fairly obvious. Yeah.
So, like the people who think this is a positive for horse racing, that might be where Seb Butterworth is coming from, it being a net positive. Maybe I'm thinking too far down the line there, but yeah, it's
there was just on this. There was an interesting. It refers to a publication. This announcement, which I confess I haven't read, but they said this about mixed products, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on it. Evidence shows consumers are more at risk when they gamble on multiple products rather than a single product. Is that not potentially confusing cause and effect? Aren't people with gambling problems going to bet on more products rather than betting on more products leads to gambling problems, or have I misunderstood
that? I'd have to think about that. But
surely they're kind of two sides of the same coin, aren't they? You'd think. Like you can understand why if you've just had a tenner on a horse and it gets beat, but suddenly you've got a thing flashing up in the top right hand corner of your screen that you got 5 free spins.
Yes.
Like the journey to kind of crack on and do your money is going to be much simpler than just you do your 10 quid and then it's over.
It's interesting you said that, because just before Cheltenham, throughout Cheltenham, and immediately after Cheltenham, I've got one active account in my own name. They were giving me free spins on slots.
Very kind of you, AK.
5 free spins, only for kind of like ridiculously small sums, like 10p and stuff like that. And and then you have those, you just go bang 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 bang, and you're now betting in your with your own money, so you can easily just log out and whatever. So there is a lot of cross-selling there, isn't it? I mean, that's the most obvious example of horse racing, a big horse racing festival as such, being used to promote something else.
My understanding is, and listen, I obviously have to dig into it a little bit more deeper myself, even because it's only just come out. But my understanding is you can still do that, but you just can't make it a condition of placing a bet on another sport. Is that correct? Or like I'd have to actually look at it.
It's not enormously clear. They've had to
Yeah.
issue some kind of clarification on this
Yeah.
point, and I don't understand the clarification either. So, what you can never rule out with the Gambling Commission is they don't necessarily understand the products that they are regulating. That it wouldn't be the first time that that's happened. I agree. It's not enormously clear that.
Yeah, the first release that I saw, I immediately asked the guys in our compliance team, does this mean that you can do this or you can't do this? And it was basically we'd have to go away and have a look at it basically because we weren't 100% sure just off the original thing, which is fine. There's plenty, I think it's December it comes in, so there's enough time. But yeah, it's just interesting. I'm just not convinced this will be a positive for horse racing from a neutral point of view. But
I mean, it's not aimed to be, of course.
yeah, I was going to say maybe that isn't
yeah.
the aim. Like, I think
Yeah.
maybe people in horse racing are jumping on the back of it as a win, but I don't think it is a win. But that is obviously not the aim.
Well, as you say, until we understand what it actually means, it might not end up being very much at all of anything.
Okay, this might be something you covered off before, just before we move on, but I'm intrigued. I know there is a school of thought amongst certainly the 1.5% that if you set up a new account and you have a few spins when you set up the account, and maybe every couple of weeks you have a couple of spins purely just so that when it comes to your account being reviewed, they can see that you're a casino user, even if you're only spinning minimal amounts intermittently, that you have more chance of your account being not restricted and being left open. Any idea if there's any credence in that?
That if you've got any kind of competent risk management, that should stand out a mile, I'd imagine. Like from I suppose bookmakers in general for account longevity want to see price insensitivity or whatever the word is, if I can get it out. That is what you're looking for. As soon as the best accounts, and when I say from a bookmaker point of view, you're probably saying the least profitable accounts overall are the least price sensitive accounts. They can flip overnight when a smart fella or a price sensitive fella, probably more accurately, gets a hold of them. So like you don't just stop watching guys that aren't price sensitive. You watch it. If anything, you might be watching them quite closely because the damage would be pretty stark if you weren't doing that and the account flipped to somebody else or somebody else used the account. So if you can employ that strategy with some bookmakers and it's successful for you, I'd imagine that they're not very good at trading and risk management.
Or you, the punter, aren't as good as you think you are. Right. Harry, 365 announced this week that they are withdrawing their service from China.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. There are two sort of three. One is that they've got too worried about Chinese government. Two is that they see the way the US is going, and that under Trump it's likely to see China as the bad guy, and this might explain. The theory goes his relative fondness for surprising fondness for Vladimir Putin, although that's not necessarily as clear cut as it appeared to be a week ago, and that if they want to make it big in America, then they better not annoy China. Even more speculatively, I think there are people suggesting that it's because the current owner wants to tidy up the regulatory framework in order to sell it. That just strikes me as there no. I just don't see any reason to think that at the moment. The way they operate, people talk about the grey market. The Chinese don't appear to think it's a grey market. They don't think Bet365 should be placing bets there at all, which leads to one of the punchiest bits of legal advice that I've ever come across, which is in 2020, Bet365, I hadn't realized this, and 365 said that they essentially disagreed with China about whether it was legal for them to be offering uh, uh, um, betting to Chinese customers from abroad. Um, that is pretty astonishing, not least because, as I understand it, betting in China, if you bet with 365, you commit a criminal offence. So, or can be found, it's a totalitarian government. So quite what a criminal offence means is rather different to what it might mean elsewhere. But you do wonder about the ethics, frankly, of that scenario where you're saying, well, we don't really worry, we're fine where we are. We're not in China, but we're going to offer it to people who could get themselves into real trouble for using it, and we're going to use these, by all accounts, these mirror sites, which disappear and reappear in order to get around the censors. One thing I would suggest is that Denise Coates and senior members of 365 are not going to be going to mainland China or Hong Kong in a hurry. Look, who knows what arrangements they've may have reached with the Chinese state, but it's pretty unappetizing, actually, all of this, and it's pretty amazing that no one here really thought to say, the Gambling Commission takes the view that if you come anywhere near British consumers and you're not licensed here, the UK, purposefully, and you advertise to them, you're committing a criminal offence. The suggestion that the Chinese can be ignored on that front is pretty extraordinary. Now, the way the Chinese state operates is very different to the way that we operate, and we don't know what sort of, steps might be taken and arrangements might be in place. But I do think it's pretty extraordinary they were able to operate in China with impunity for as long as they did, really.
Yeah. Anything to add?
I've
comprehensive.
I've WhatsApped Harry my thoughts on this, and he said, "Whatever you do not say this live on the podcast." So,
right.
Oh God, I don't even remember that. That's just a long list of things I'm telling you not to say.
A lot of it you've just regurgitated as your own opinion, there. But
have I? Sorry, do me for copyright. Yeah,
I'm only joking. But we always used to joke that when the Chinese Super League and the football was getting big, that we wouldn't see Stoke City on a pre-season tour there anyway. But
no, exactly.
Yeah, it's I don't think I agree with everything Harry says pretty much there. To a word basically. The only thing I don't think it's as big a price that they would be for sale. As absolutely.
Oh, really?
As no.
Well, you'd have heard more.
You wouldn't know. You'd never know. It might be. Yeah. It could be very small. But I think some of the other reasons you give are more prominent. But it's not. It's not.
I think there's another possibility actually, which is I think that the net around gambling is tightening in recent years. Really over the last year, I think that regulation is beginning to catch up with practice. It was so far behind for so long. I think it's getting closer to understanding the industry. It's closer to understanding the industry that it regulates. And I think also it's becoming more, I mean, look at these fines, for example. I think there are more, we've got the illegal bookmaker. That doesn't happen very often at all, that the Gambling Commission get involved in that. So I wonder if they're just reading the regulatory tea leaves and thinking, actually, before people really catch up with what's going on here, maybe let's just get out.
They've done very well out of it anyway to
sounds like it.
Long. So
right, loads more to get through from Bet365 to the Post bookmakers, and this is a story about the illegal firm with whom a former racehorse owner is alleged to have lost £270,000 after the collapse of the Post bookmaker. We saw Hayden Simcock appearing at Birmingham Magistrates Court around this. The claim seemed to be that he believed the company was legit. What do you make of this, AK? Like, are these kind of firms? Are there plenty of them? Do you know? Is this regular? Do you buy that he had no idea that they weren't licensed?
Do I buy that I don't know him. The most striking thing about that article was that he turned up in court with an Audi shopping bag, which which stood out.
It's got 300 grand, no?
Everyone thinks the black market is thriving. I might have to change my opinion, but yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, people have lost money in it. I suppose it's like I just think the UK regulated market. We've just got to make the UK regulated market, be it regulators, bookmakers. It's just got to be more enticing than non-regulated options to members of the public, basically. And that's what we're going to try. We're trying to help in that regard to some extent, to a small extent. But you need a thriving regulated market, as this stuff will be more prominent. It's probably, as you know, we probably think it's quite prominent anyway. But yeah, we need a robust regulated market where everything makes sense and decisions are being made for the right reasons, basically.
It does seem like stuff like this, Harry, should help at least maybe dissuade people from looking to bet with unlicensed operators, given the amount of money is lost by punters here.
Well, I think on this occasion it put them off betting with unlicensed bookmakers that get caught, because it seems to be in the getting caught that the money disappeared. So he can thank the Racing Post for its investigative journalism. No, more seriously, I think there's an awful lot more of this going on than we read about. I think probably we all hear about WhatsApp bookmakers. I think it's pretty extraordinary. They had 1,000 customers, employed 10 people, and the guy Hayden Simcock appears to believe that the person he was working for had a license that allowed them to do this. It's an extraordinary situation. He's been done for providing facilities and advertising unlawful gambling. And the Gambling Commission are very hot on advertising unlawful gambling. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how this one plays out. But it does strike me as the sort of operation that, the Gambling Commission needs to be looking at. How many people have 270k sitting with a bookmaker nowadays, a licensed bookmaker? I would have thought almost none. And this is the real problem, isn't it? Which is that people who want to bet big, it's not people who are having their accounts restricted. It's people who want to bet in large sums are now going to WhatsApp bookmakers, and they can be complete mugs. And they're perfectly happy to be described as mugs. They want to have a fun bet, and if they're rich, a fun bet requires some jeopardy, and jeopardy means putting on a decent wedge. So they're going to go to these WhatsApp guys. We've all been saying it for years. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
A couple of jockey bans. Neil Callan has been banned for 8 months off the back of some inappropriate use of social media. This has been suspended for 2 years, so he is able to continue riding. And Nicola Curry with a 39-day ban, TC, for excessive use of the whip.
Yeah, the Callan one. I know Neil. I've met him a few times. He's quite a punchy character. He probably is the least, he shouldn't be on Twitter given his personality. He does call a spade a spade.
Shoot from the hip.
He got done for a few posts in December 2023 about to Tony McGlone, who's a steward. I imagine, because Neil's quite old, he's 46, and I imagine he might have been riding at the same time as Tony McGlone did, if indeed that's the Tony McGlone I'm thinking about. He got done for offensive, abusive and inappropriate tweets towards McGlone. He got done for 8 months, suspended for 2 years and a 1.5 grand fine. So I would suggest he's not going to be on X anymore. But I had a look at his account today, and he's only retweeted once since November the 1st, 2024. So I imagine he's come off there for his own good. And
can I just jump in there, Tony? I think just want to make one point about this, which is that absolutely he shouldn't have done that, and you can't have them tweeting, jockeys tweeting abuse at officials. But if the idea now is that bringing racing into disrepute is going to be dealt with more in a more muscular way. That needs to apply to everything. And we talked about the other day. Well, we've spoken about there's at least one trainer who has put up some unbelievably vile stuff online and talk about bringing racing in disrepute. Horrific anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. You got to do that to everyone. Not just Neil Callan. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. We've mentioned the trading question a few times, but we won't name her here. This is another extraordinary one, Nicola Curry, totting up procedure. She went 1 over last month. That's a 4th of such offence in as many months. So that got her up to a 39-day ban, 9 of which are suspended for 6 months or the next 200 rides. So so she's basically out of action for a full month. She's had a lot of problems in recent years. She was high flying in about 2021, but she's had her struggles since getting rides, etc. But a month out of the saddle is, again, it just seems to me disproportionate. But she's had plenty of, as she admitted herself, she was at a win at all costs policy. She's probably desperate for winners to reverse the losing trend.
It's a little bit sad, isn't it, when you win at all costs? It's probably not for anyone's benefit other than her own, I'd imagine. It's kind of might be where you're at in your career that you just need a fucking winner.
I think most people.
She had a decent start to the year. Maybe that's why.
I think most punters would probably rather more jockeys got done for not trying to lose at all costs rather than to win at all costs. But as we've seen before, as with the recent Irish case that got overturned on appeal, it's very hard to prove that. But I just think a month out for 4 relatively minor transgressions.
I don't think when you're talking public perception and stuff, I think this stuff just doesn't even resonate with bloody animal aid or whatever. It's just not even, doesn't really seem to be on the radar. And for this stuff, it's about what's the big race on TV. I think it's probably over egging the pudding, isn't it, a little bit? And like you said, the amount of days there is fairly catastrophic. I agree. It seems too draconian.
Yeah, it's refreshing to see. She didn't seem to, she effectively said she had no grounds for appeal and that she deserved the ban, and those are the rules, which is a rarity these days. I think often when sports people get called out on stuff. TC, there's also going to be a change. We saw a week or so ago yet another walkover, where it was a 3-runner race, a couple of non-runners. But we're going to see a change now where the winner no longer, or the sole runner no longer has to complete.
Yeah, pretty farcical situation whereby if you do get handed a walkover due to lack of runners or non-runners, etc., the horse actually has to trot past the winning post to actually get the winning prize money. Yeeland Haydock on March the 19th was the last horse that will be being forced to do that. So we won't have any of this kind of pretty kind of farcical situation of horses to advertise the fact that it's a walkover by running in front of the stands and everyone pointing to it and saying, "Oh yes, we didn't have a proper race." But so that's the last one. So that's a welcome rule change.
And a story coming out earlier in the week around the PRA report on Ascot and Arc and Jockey Club racecourses around the prize money being donated as a percentage of racing revenue, effectively TC, and calling them out that not enough of the correct proportion is being given back. What do you make of this?
Yeah, this is the Professional Racing Association's latest shot across the bows. They're a splinter organisation said to represent 170 trainers. They've done a 4,000-word report about what courses aren't putting enough into prize money. They singled out Ascot in particular, and they also said the Arc tracks and the Jockey Club racecourses tracks have been found wanting as well. bizarrely, all the courses involved refused to comment publicly. But it's interesting that Bill Barber in the Racing Post today, the industry editor, said it actually might help. Might help kind of like prompt courses to actually pay a bit more. We'll see there, but it's another example of Savile just kind of like people just think he's mischief making, and I think he's fallen out with Rafe Beckett and William Haggas as well, two of his former allies here. So yeah, it seems like there's some merit to it, but as with all these things, the courses involved are privately briefing against him, saying they don't agree with his stats, etc. But yeah, it's again, everybody in the thoroughbred group and the industry, they won't kind of like comment on him because they don't think he's got any mandate whatsoever to talk for the sport itself.
Was it Rafe Beckett that was involved in? Was it either organising the strike stuff previously or having races where there were like one or two runners and stuff like that? Or...
He didn't actually put his hand up to it, but everyone thought he was a prime mover in that kind of.
Like just from the outside.
I think he went and did it. He went and did an interview at the time, didn't he? Which sort of suggested that he might be the spoke, or be involved in it.
But then they all the train as soon as Cruddas threatened some legal action, they all back down. But yeah, it's interesting because Beckett is actually. I think he trained a lot of good horses for Savile back in the day. It might have even having some now, but it just shows you. So Savile is, like you said, he's a mischief maker, and people have called him a lot worse as well. But like I said, if you believe Bill Barber, you reckon that might be a kick up the arse for some courses to actually kind of like pull their socks up as a guy's.
I wouldn't wish it, and it's not the ideal situation, but it does surprise me that those stakeholders haven't been able to mobilise a little bit better. Just overall, given the deal they get, I wouldn't go as far as saying strike now, but it surprises me that something along those lines hasn't happened.
A few more stories to get through before we get to questions. TC starting with Famous Bridge, who will lose his place in. I thought losing his place in the Grand National, but I see.
No. It just there's a few just any other business type things here. Famous Bridge tested positive after winning the Grand National draw at Haydock, but he's actually still in the Grand National as of today, and he's also entered up somewhere else at Aintree as well if he doesn't get in, which he doesn't look like he's going to get in the big one. So that's yet another positive test for racing. Langadan's been retired. Very controversial. Very controversial horse. It sounds like he's got a heart murmur they picked up, so they've decided to retire him. Probably one of the most divisive horses, given the way he's been campaigned in recent years that racing's had of late. So yeah, he's gone. I think it'd be interesting if they would have kicked on with him. He improved 19 pounds in 3 starts at the end of last season. So, maybe even though he's a dual Cheltenham winner, maybe a bit of a wasted talent. What else have we got? Oh yeah, Dr. Jerry Hill, BHA doctor, much respected doctor. He's retired. So a lot of people coming out with positive things to say about him. And Julie Harrington is probably more visible now as in her Chester role than she was at the BHA. She's come out and said Premier Racing is a very good thing, but then again, she would be saying that given her role at Chester. So yeah, that's 4 other minor stories.
A few questions now before we let you guys go. David asks, what could be done to improve horses going to stalls in the UK? It drives me bonkers that when you watch 20 horses going at the Curragh and they all go off on time, and then 4 horses out of 6 or 7 give trouble at Kempton or Lingfield. They mustn't stalls train them at all. TC. Yeah,
that is a common complaint. If you ever watch racing in other jurisdictions abroad, America and stuff like that, most of them going, like a breeze. I wouldn't watch a lot of Irish racing, so I couldn't comment how better they are here than here. But yeah, the youngsters, as you'd expect, they do give a lot of trouble, but it's been going around for ages that, trainers should be training their horses a lot better, to come out of the stalls or even go in them. So yeah, I would agree with that.
I saw one of the replies to that tweet was from Dan Heap, who does a bit of photography amongst other stuff on the racecourse, and he had commented that the Curragh racecourse invested in stalls that are actually slightly wider than the UK. I don't know how true that is. I'd imagine it's true if Dan said it. So it might be part of the reason. It might be slightly easier. I don't know, to be honest with you. But that was just an interesting reply.
They have a lot of trial races as well over there in Ireland, so I imagine that helps as well.
WV, horse and cricket. Does the panel think more trainers will relocate abroad due to the poor prize money and shambolic leadership in the UK? Those are his words, not mine. Harry?
Well, I think there's a big barrier. Brexit makes, I think, life more difficult on that front. And I think the language barrier and the cultural barrier is difficult. But yeah, I mean, we've been seeing quite a few go over. It's not a particularly new one. I remember Jack and Linda Ramsden went over there 25 years ago. I think the prize money is better. They get all sorts of state sponsorship that we don't get, but I don't know to what extent you can just rock up and get that. I don't think we're going to see a huge exodus, but we might continue to see a bit of dripping, in the same way that that's how markets work, is when one appears more appealing, people try to move towards it. But there are very obvious barriers.
Sam TM asks thoughts on the gene testing story. TC?
Yeah, I saw a couple of articles on this in the Racing Post and the Guardian. It sounds like this does go on in other equestrians international sports, and the BHA are being proactive here. They put 2 million aside to look into this in horse racing. Like you say, you've got to praise them for being proactive. I mean, I wouldn't know enough about this to see if it's to know if it's a real kind of like potential problem for British horse racing, UK horse racing. But yeah, £2 million in the grand scheme of things is probably money well spent if it does unearth some problems.
Nobody altered the genes of any horses I've had shares in anyway.
C asks, and AK, after what you said earlier about your streaking, I'm a bit scared to come to you with this one, but with the success of Invades and the Irish student race days, should this be something that greyhound racing needs to take into consideration to reignite a new crowd attending?
Yeah, maybe. I think just in general, the younger people probably expect, as a minimum, slightly better facilities than maybe some greyhound tracks.
I think so.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
I grew up in London when Wimbledon was still open, and definitely more common as a kind of a teenager, 15, 16, to just go for a night at Wimbledon than no one would ever mention going to Kempton or going racing.
Yeah,
it was cheaper, easier, less about the sport, more about just having a good time and having.
It might be to do with price.
Yeah.
I think it can definitely compete on price. It can 100% compete on price. I think the Invades type crowd that's referenced in that thing tends to be more, in my opinion, college, university, rather than general population in the age group. I think, I'm sure you went to university, George, but
I went to Bellevue a few times as well.
Did you? My local trip. I was actually on Google Earth the other day having a look at the semi-detached houses they've got on there, where it used to be. Actually, randomly, someone sent it to me. Yeah, that was an interesting spot. All right, Bellevue on a Friday.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think just that crowd. I think you'd struggle to get them greyhound racing.
I think it'd be an ideal sport for them, but the tracks and the courses just aren't big enough to take that amount of people. Well, they'll struggle to take in the hundreds, let alone the thousands, wouldn't they? Most courses.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would be ideal. Be interesting if someone has a go at it. Yeah, I don't think the tracks definitely can't hold anywhere near that volume of people. I also think just with greyhound racing in particular, you're very close to the grounds, and any kind of rowdiness could be more of a problem than it could be with horse racing, where the horses might be 30 yards away from you or something like that. I think it's a lot more fraught with danger with a crowd of that ilk, maybe.
I went on a stag to about 5 or 6 years ago to Galway, and we went racing. Went to the greyhound track there, and we definitely weren't the only stag group who were there, and it did have a bit of a buzz about it. And obviously, Galway's Galway, and every weekend there seems to be descended upon by stag parties, but it felt like a pretty good place, and definitely receptive. They were receptive to have that kind of clientele there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, worth looking into, sure.
I will not be setting up that business idea, but you're welcome to.
Finally, Keith Nicholson says, is there a story to be discussed about Coolmore sending 3-year-old colts to France to go hurdling?
I tried to find this story. I couldn't find it.
He's asking, is there a story? Maybe the answer is just no.
All right. I'm assuming he must know that they are.
Yeah.
But there could well be. Sorry.
To be TBC.
Yeah, I'll try and find it again, but I couldn't find it this afternoon.
Good stuff. Cheers to the guys, as ever, for joining us on the Racing Room, sharing their thoughts across all things racing and betting, really. I think after what AK said earlier, you can expect the Casino Room, sponsored by AK Bets, to be launching relatively soon as a new podcast. We'll be back again next week, but make sure, as AK says, really aggressive with pricing ahead of the Grand National. Loads of stuff going on at Aintree starting on Thursday. Loads of great racing to get stuck into. So make sure you check out AK Bets in order to do so. And we'll be back again next week for the next episode of The Racing Room.